Today on the show, we're going to take a look at actors that have made the jump from the small screen to the big screen. It's always easier to book a TV show as an emerging actor, but that doesn't mean you're stuck in the TV world. We'll take a look at some examples of actors that have broken out of their humble TV beginnings and have taken the big screen by storm. We'll also take a look at actors that have gone the other way, big names in the film world that put aside their celebrity to act in a TV show. With the growing rise of AAA television shows on every streaming service, it's no doubt that most actors are dreaming to see their show in the top 10 streaming on Netflix. Lastly, we'll take a look at television and film currently and see if the two are really comparable. And you can now find us on Spotify and take us on the go. Hello and welcome back to the Behind the Screen podcast. My name is Goran and I'm joined here today by my good friend Nicolas Cage from the Did Somebody Say Movies podcast. How are you doing, bud?
I'm good. It's good to be back. Another week, another episode, as they say.
Another episode, another topic. And I'm excited about today's episode because it's all about actors who started out on the small screen that made the leap to feature films. What's so fascinating about this topic is that we'll start off by taking a look at actors who had their beginnings usually on forgettable TV shows, except Ryan Gosling. At a time when you had to make sure you watch a certain channel at a certain time on a certain date, being recognized as talent on a TV show was tougher to do than film. Going from being on a 22 episode of a TV show to sold out showings of a movie for weeks on end is always better. Or at least it was. Next, we'll take a look at actors that swung the other way, huge Hollywood stars that take up miniseries or TV shows. With just how much good TV is coming out these days, it's no doubt that actors would rather star in a Netflix show that's at the top of the chart for weeks, rather than a drama that's pulled from theater after a week and a half. Lastly, we're going to take a look at how television and film are currently comparing with each other. And as always, what better way to get started than with a couple of quickfire examples?
All right.
Obviously, we know lots of talent comes out of SNL, with comedians going on to do films, and this includes Andy Samberg, Bill Hader, Amy Poehler, Maya Rudolph, and tons of other people.
Love it.
I love MacGruber.
MacGruber's so good.
Robin Williams gained his fame from Mork and Mindy, which was on the air for 4 years. Naomi Watts had a reoccurring role on an Australian soap opera called Home and Away.
You're kidding.
Leonardo DiCaprio had his start on Growing Pains in 1991.
Nice, yep.
And Jennifer Lawrence went from being on a terrible sitcom, The Bill Engvall Show, to starring in Winter's Bone and getting a nomination for it.
Oh my god, this sitcom does sound terrible.
So it's not hard to look at an actor's IMDb page and see what early work they had in their life. Despite a lot of these celebrities acting in films early on, it was usually the re-aired and syndicated TV shows that really made actors known. It's much easier to catch a rerun than a rescreening of a film, or at least it was. We're going to take a look at some actors that had made a name for themselves on TV and made the leap to film. First up, we have George Clooney.
Yes. Oh boy, Goran, I gotta say, love him to death.
And George Clooney is without a doubt one of the best examples on this list for how important TV played in a lot of these early careers. And during the 80s, George wasn't just on like one big TV show, but he had 3 recurring roles. One on E/R, not ER, E/R.
Big difference, yep.
The Facts of Life and Roseanne.
He was on Roseanne?
And he also appeared as an extra on other shows and single episodes of shows like The Golden Girls. And this is a great example because George wasn't strictly limited to acting on TV shows. In his earlier credits for films, he had a couple, but again, you can't help that Grizzly 2: The Revenge was as popular as The Facts of Life. It's a really bad movie.
That's, yeah, I can, I haven't seen it, but I can imagine.
Everyone likes Grizzly 1 way better, obviously. It's the OG, you know?
Oh, yeah. Grizzly 7, that's my favorite.
Grizzly.
People say it's like a fact, but I'm sure a lot of people didn't know that in '88, George Clooney was in the hilarious Return of the Killer Tomatoes movie. I really like seeing him in that film because you get a sense of just how personable he is, and that despite the role he's given, he's having so much fun acting in the film.
I think it's time for product placement.
Good day, mate. Hey, Ozer.
Hey, Matt. Hey, Chad. How about a crest?
And 4 years later, George starred in ER. And it's funny that George Clooney was literally on 2 TV shows named ER. I mean, I can't really think of another actor that had two roles in something that was basically the same name but different things.
No, me neither. I'm struggling to think of it, but yeah, that's really funny.
So this all leads up to 1996, where George Clooney ends up starring in From Dusk Till Dawn, which is an awesome movie. It's a fantastic movie. And from that point on, George Clooney rocketed and was basically handing out these great films. Batman and Robin, The Thin Red Line, Three Kings, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Ain't this place a geographical oddity? 2 weeks from everywhere.
The Perfect Storm, Ocean's 11, Solaris, and Spy Kids.
Oh, wait, what? Which Spy Kids was he in?
Because George Clooney's 100% in that Spy Kids movie, and he's in Spy Kids 3D.
So what do you say, kids? You up for it?
I used to, dude, Spy Kids 3D was my favorite movie as a kid. I remember Antonio Banderas like nothing, and oh my God, I bought a copy of that movie, and I would just wear the 3D glasses in public. It was so cool. I was like 10. I loved it.
I think everyone has one of those clamshell Spy Kids 3D cases in everyone's basement somewhere. And it's just insane to see how many blockbuster films he appeared in just like a handful of years after he started out doing these kind of smaller, rinky-dinkier TV shows. I mean, Oh Brother, Where Art Thou was one of my favorite films of all time. And the fact that that was one of his first films that he really, put himself in, good for him.
Well, I don't want FOP, goddammit. I'm a Dapper Dan man.
Yeah, he's got a good agent.
So moving on, we have Steve Carell, and this one's interesting because he's currently on the downswing, going from TV to movies and then back to TV right now. He hasn't acted in a TV show since 2013, but in the last 2 years, we had The Morning Show, which is a more serious, dramatic role for him, and then currently Space Force. Have you seen Space Force?
Yeah.
I haven't caught it yet.
You know what? I have seen Space Force. I could go on about it, but it's not terrible.
Yeah, it's not as bad as some people are making out. But like, again, I brought up this point where I think having something average is worse than having something that's bad or good. Something forgettable is always just, forgettable. So Steve was always interested in comedy. And in the mid-90s, he was working with Second City, taking classes and learning comedy. And in 1996, he joined the Dana Carvey Show. Despite the show only being 7 episodes, it's a huge cult hit, and is a big reason why Steve had such popularity later on. He was in a show called Over the Top, as well as Just Shoot Me and Watching Ellie. And around the same time, Bruce Almighty came out and basically introduced the world to Steve Carell. Everyone still remembers that first scene in Bruce Almighty.
The Prime Minister of Sweden visited Washington today, and my tiny little nipples went to France.
And Steve's career choice at the time was like unbelievable. I mean, the next year he has Anchorman come out, and then The 40-Year-Old Virgin. And these films released leading right up to the very first season of The Office in 2005. This is an unreal track record. This dude's mad funny. And even before the show came out, you had him in films like Little Miss Sunshine, Crazy Stupid Love, and Despicable Me come out while The Office is on air. So he's balancing both of these worlds perfectly. It kind of seems like he started at both of them. He kind of have like the cheap 90s shows that he was on, but he's like juggling all this stuff at the same time in the mid 2000s. And it's not often you see an actor putting out some of their life's greatest work so close together and in so many different mediums. I mean, Anchorman and The Office came out 1 year apart and are 100% what everyone's gonna remember Steve Carell for his entire life.
Yeah.
And after The Office stopped in 2013, we saw Steve putting out the occasional comedy, but he pivoted away from roles and he started doing more dramatic and serious films. We had Foxcatcher, The Big Short, Cafe Society. It seemed like he was really yearning to do these dramatic roles after, being the funniest guy for like 10 years straight. And with the way streaming services were coming out with these groundbreaking dramas that blow cable shows out of the water, it's no surprise when we saw him starting acting in shows by Apple and Netflix.
Yeah. See, it's fascinating. You're right. He's gone back and forth between movies and TV. And I don't know if I love funny Steve Carell.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I also like dramatic Steve Carell, but I think I like funny Steve Carell more. Although I will say this. He starred in a movie called Last Flag Flying. It was so good and so heartwarming. So maybe he's pretty good at drama too.
That's true. But he was also in, Welcome to Morrowind?
Oh,
Ooh.
yeah.
All right, moving on. We have Alison Brie, a more recent example of an actor that's basically rocketing through the TV world. And with younger actors looking to get into film and TV, you usually see a bunch of, unheard of short films and TV movies on their IMDb pages. Usually just like stuff that someone made in LA that never got picked up and, is resting somewhere. And Alison's is no different. She has credits for things like Dickie Smalls from Shame to Fame to acting in a show called Hot. And
What?
you know what the craziest thing is the same year she did Dickie Smalls from Shame to Fame, she started acting in Mad Men.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is impressive.
And everyone knows that Mad Men became absolutely massive. And Alison must have had a knack for like picking hit TV shows because, again, 2 years later, she ends up starring as one of the people in Community. And both of these shows ran until 2015. And during the course of these shows, we saw Alison act in like a handful of movies as well. But again, that Mad Men Community combo for her, balancing the comedy and the drama, kind of like what Steve Carell was doing with his movies, but with two different TV shows.
Right.
And she was in Scream 4, The 5-Year Engagement, Kings of Summer, which was awesome, and was one of the voices in the Lego Movie. Huge movie.
It's one of my favorites.
Funny enough, the year that both of the shows ended, and after having a stab at a couple feature films, we saw Alison return to TV immediately, but on what platform? Netflix. And we see her starting to act in another streaming show, this time being BoJack Horseman. And a couple years later, she works on Glow and ends up writing and directing episodes of the show. During her overlap on these Netflix shows, she worked on films like Joshi, The Little Hours, and The Disaster Artist. So it isn't clear if she's leaning too hard in either direction, film or TV. And I think this is a great example of being able to bounce back and forth consistently. It's almost always better in a way, since I think the pressure to perform in a TV show is absolutely massive when it's your comeback role. The idea that Steve Carell is in his first TV comedy since The Office just means everyone will constantly be referencing it in relation to his new show. And the fact that it's also made by the same guy, it's a no-win situation. I mean, you kind of have to have a couple shows in between for people to forget that you did those other shows and see that, you know, you're trying out a few things. But when your last show that you did was The Office and your new show is basically The Office in space, I don't know. It's tough to separate the two.
Yeah, it's true. And especially because The Office is such a cultural, landmark. You know what I mean? You can't forget about that, no matter how recent or how not recent it is.
People have gone from replacing Brick quotes to Michael Scott quotes.
Yeah.
Like, we've done a full 180 on it, you know?
No, God! I don't know what we're yelling about!
All right, so up next we have Ryan Gosling. And Ryan Gosling is one of the only examples on this list where they listed the TV shows that he was on, and I've seen them. And I've seen the episodes that he was on.
Yeah.
And his first two credits on his IMDb page are for Are You Afraid of the Dark in 1995 and Goosebumps in 1996.
Nice.
I remember watching these episodes. The Are You Afraid of the Dark one, not as much, but that Goosebumps one, I know it's Say Cheese and Die. I 100% remember that episode. And I think in the episode, Ryan Gosling, they take a picture, and the picture is basically one of his friends is super skinny, one's super big, and Ryan Gosling's just like getting fatter and fatter in the episode. It's insanity. And after that, he just exploded into the TV world.
Oh, I can feel it. I'm gonna explode. Please, Terry.
Okay.
I assume a lot of the shows he ended up on were like as the brother of the family, because he's like a very cute blonde boy, perfect as like one of the brothers in the family. And in 1999, he started Young Hercules, which I didn't watch, but the same year, I don't know if you've ever seen this show, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's The Lost World.
Heard of it.
It's one of those shows where it's like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, Young Hercules, Xena the Warrior. They all kind of filmed in like jungles and stuff like that. And it was kind of like an Indiana Jones vibe show.
Interesting.
And watching the trailer for Young Hercules, I would have 100% watched this as a kid. This looked right up my alley, you know?
Yeah.
And again, I'm sure he fights like a dinosaur in an episode or something. And after growing up on TV for like 5 years, Ryan finally was acting in big movies, but not as the lead, but, you know, good nonetheless. Remember the Titans came out in 2000, and while a memorable movie, most people will remember Ryan's first big role in the 2004 film The Notebook.
Right. Yeah. Classic.
I haven't seen The Notebook. Have you seen The Notebook?
I haven't, but honestly, even my roommate goes on to me about how good it is.
We should watch The Notebook together one day. That sounds like a nice afternoon. I'm so down.
Gorian, let's make it a date. Yeah.
And then after that, the floodgates opened, and Ryan attacked the screen with films like Lars and the Real Girl, Blue Valentine, Drive, Crazy Stupid Love, The Place Beyond the Pines, Only God Forgives, The Big Short, Nice Guys, La La Land, First Man, Blade Runner 2049. These aren't just films that like he randomly chose to star in. So many of these films have huge cult followings, and people absolutely either adore or hate some of these films that he's worked on. It kind of seems like his film career choice has always just been like super, you know, either love it or hate it kind of thing. Because again, I only know people think Only God Forgives is horrible. I think it's kind of interesting, you know. It's always the Drive debates and whatnot.
Yeah, exactly.
Here's the thing that's unique though about Ryan. It seems that the streaming market hasn't been able to snag him yet. He stayed off of television shows for a long time, and the idea that he might one day choose to act in a show, that's a really big thing, you know? And luckily, unlike Steve Carell, I don't think anyone will be comparing whatever drama he ends up working on with like young Hercules, you know?
Yeah. No, that's true. That's true. But you know what? I do just want to take a second and say that honestly, a good agent makes a world of difference. You know?
That's what I think happened to Brendan Fraser. I think that his agent just like screwed him over in a bunch of roles. And yeah, I mean, again, too, it's like the fact that his agent is getting them these movies that are just, you know, landmark films. Like people are still going to be talking about these movies for such a long time.
He's already had such a fantastic career with all of these movies. Like Blade Runner, for example. What a huge role, even though the movie didn't do that great. It's still awesome.
Ryan Gosling basically makes his next biggest film every single time.
Yeah.
I mean, think of La La Land, fantastic movie. First Man, fantastic movie.
Yeah.
Every movie comes out with, like, I pretty much want to watch.
Yeah.
So, moving on from that, I couldn't just pick one of these people, and I picked a TV show for this one, and this is the entire cast of Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah.
And have you ever seen the show or clips of the show?
No, I've seen a few episodes, but I always keep getting sidetracked.
1999 was a strange year.
Yep.
Looking back, it really does feel like it was a huge turning point for media. The Sopranos started airing in that year, alongside with The West Wing. These were edgier shows that didn't come from a TV background, but were almost like brand new inceptions of the format of television. SpongeBob and Family Guy started airing the same year too, and alongside of that, we see what I'll say both the most underrated and overrated show of all time, Freaks and Geeks. And I say underrated because I do truly believe that not a lot of people know this show exists, but also overrated because it launched so many famous careers in Hollywood that people will always look back at it when they're discussing any of the actors from it. So the main cast includes Linda Cardinelli, James Franco, Seth Rogen, Jason Segel, Martin Starr, Busy Phillips, John Francis Daley, and Sam Levine. And not only that, but you also had cameos from people like Ben Foster, Rashida Jones, and the classic Shia LaBeouf episode.
That's a crazy cast list.
It's not often that you see shows casts explode into popularity, whether it being like mainstream acting or writing or just like directing. And despite how incredibly famous everyone on Friends is, it's always weird when such an incredibly famous show ends, and then you start to see what everyone's first projects are, and everyone instinctively goes, oh wow, it's Ross from Friends in that movie.
Yeah.
Oh, Chandler's in that movie. They've done something so huge and so big that they can't be separated from that. I mean, the fact that people have watched 100 and whatever episodes of Friends and still don't know the actors' real names and will just refer to them as like the character names.
I know.
You don't want to get stuck in that, you know?
Yeah.
And just looking at how young the cast of Freaks and Geeks is enough to make anyone's head spin. James Franco and Seth Rogen found their success in the stoner franchise world. Jason Segel did a bit more TV with How I Met Your Mother before busting into huge blockbuster films. Martin Starr, my favorite from the bunch, is always popping up in a TV show here and a film there. Linda has also found a healthy mix of television world and the film world. The one I'm most proud of and excited for is John Francis Daley. And he was like the main geek on the show, the little scrawny guy. And he was in a couple movies afterwards, but he always struggled to be in any leading position. He was always, you know, the background nerdy guy and whatnot. And what I love is that he pivoted his career and began writing and directing films. And he helped write screenplays for Horrible Bosses, The Vacation Film, and Spider-Man Homecoming, and is currently writing and directing a Dungeons & Dragons movie. And he also directed Vacation and what I think is a incredibly underrated film, Game Night. It's funny because we see all these actors like John and James Franco that slowly pivot towards like the creation side of film. But we're still waiting for a TV revival for any of these main characters. They've popped up in a couple of shows here and there, mainly Seth Rogen's like a cameo on TV shows, basically.
I got a new set of wheels. Trust me, he's my best friend.
But I'd love to see something from these people as like the head of the thing. A great new TV show with like any of these people. I think any of them, without a doubt, are ready for another show.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Also, I just looked up Martin Starr. He was in Silicon Valley.
Bill, that is not sexy.
Yes, it is.
If there's a man with a beard, Martin Starr will play him.
Exactly.
What's that?
Chewbacca, it's Chewie.
Oh, another beard joke.
It's no secret just how good television shows have become. Ever since the inception of the overarching plot, we've really had this incredibly deep moving shows that tackle subject matters that often do better with a bit more breathing room than a 90-minute film. A show can really let an actor run wild and gives them time to actually become the character. We're going to take a look at some big-time actors who decided to return to the small screen.
All right, let's do it.
All right. We got Matthew McConaughey. And Matthew himself had a bit of a fascinating career. He was starring as the male hunk in films like Contact, The Wedding Planner, and How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Personally, I'm more of a Sahara and a Tropic Thunder guy when it comes to Matthew McConaughey.
Oh, yeah.
You make me happy.
And he was in like a weird TV history movie documentary and a few episodes of Eastbound and Down, but sounded like he was playing himself more than anything there. These roles are very kind of small in the grand scope of things, and it wasn't until 2014 when the first season of True Detective came out and shocked the world with just how good it was. And not only that, but even his co-star Woody Harrelson hasn't been on a show in a while. Despite being on Cheers and Will and Grace, Woody hasn't really acted in a TV show until True Detective. It's like this TV show was specifically made to take two huge stars and put them on the small screen in the most captivating way possible. And I just rewatched True Detective again, and it still blows my mind how good that show is and just how well you see these actors in these films that get Oscars every year, and you give them 6 hours to do the same role that they had an hour and a half to do, and you just give it a little bit more breathing room. I think that's really what we'll talk about this a bit later, but the breathing room for these TV shows is 100% why they are dominating film.
Yeah, that's so true. Also, fun fact, I don't know why, but when I was younger, I always used to get Matthew McConaughey and Woody Harrelson confused. Like all the time. I don't know why.
I think it's because they both sound like types of wood, you know? Is that a McConaughey or a Harrelson, you know?
Exactly.
I don't know.
I don't
it's
know.
a bit woody, you know?
Ew.
So it's no surprise that the year after this came out, Netflix scooped up the director Cary Fukunaga, and the very next year, they create The Beasts of No Nation for Netflix, which was the first major blockbuster that was created to directly compete with these Hollywood films. I mean, I don't know if you remember 2015, but when this film was out on Netflix, people were confused if it was going to be able to get nominated or not. It was the first time that you were looking at a film that was fantastic, but then someone says, oh, it's not eligible, and you were really like, well, why not?
Yeah.
True Detective Season 1 was so good that the complete slap in the face the second season was, it really hurt a lot. And this may sound like it's turning into a True Detective topic rather than a Matthew McConaughey topic, but I really do think that this show is really important for the evolution of TV shows. The second season performed terribly despite having Colin Farrell, Rachel McAdams, Taylor Kitsch, and Vince Vaughn. It felt like after the incredible first season that anyone could take a role in the show and get the same results. And this is without a doubt one of the first of these dramatic television series that squandered the talent it had and produced something so forgettable. And it basically warned us that not every show that seems like it was going to be really good actually will be. Matthew hasn't done a show since, and after seeing just how off base the second season to probably the greatest show of all time was, I'd say he will be very selective before putting another 10 plus hours acting into a series.
True. He seems like a very selective guy when it comes to his roles, but I love seeing him on screen, big or small, you know?
And I do think that second season of True Detective, people like Vince Vaughn and Colin Farrell thought that, you know, is there a Rachel McAdams TV show? I don't think so. Like, again, we saw these actors that don't perform in TV shows. And yeah, I guess, you know, I mean, who wouldn't have said yes to True Detective Season 2 when asked, you know?
Yeah.
We didn't know just how not good compared to the first it was going to be. Yeah. And again, this was like another speed bump where I feel like Vince Vaughn's going to take a lot of convincing to do another TV show now after seeing how bad this came out.
That's true. But you know what I will say? I want more Vince Vaughn. I don't care how. I don't care in what format. If it's an audiobook, even better. I just want more Vince Vaughn.
Come on, twinkle, twinkle, baby. Twinkle, twinkle.
And I hate to put another show, but the show is just too big, and it's Big Little Lies. And this is another show where almost the entire class is flocking in one direction. I know, it's a big show, Big Little Lies.
Yeah, that's good. That was good.
This time from the big screen to the small screen. And Big Little Lies came out in 2017, and I can conclude it's a good show after watching 2.5 episodes.
Yeah.
The show was huge. I mean, it was incredibly popular, and it featured performances from actors that we don't get to watch on a TV show. Reese Witherspoon hasn't acted in a TV show in ages, and funny enough, after doing this, now she's got a hand in the morning show. I mean, she's an executive producer and she's acting on it. And I think she's also like directing and writing a little bit on it. And it's like Big Little Lies ignited something that really made everyone doing this want to pursue more dramatic television roles. You had Nicole Kidman, who hasn't been in a show since 1989. And funny enough, the same year that Big Little Lies came out in 2017, she's on another show as well called Top of the Lake. Obviously, one did way better than the other. And much like Reese, we now see Nicole is going to be in the upcoming television show, The Undoing. Kind of seems like this sparked their, come back to television. Hey, instead of these long days, we're going to shoot for the summer, and we get to hang out. And TV shows always seem way better than movies working on, because movies are just always so stressful and you have to go over budget, versus TV shows kind of feel a bit cozier, everything's more settled and a bit more calm. It's just a bunch of sets you're using over and over again.
Yeah, I know what you mean.
We got to say, without a doubt, the biggest get Big Little Lies had was Meryl Streep. And Meryl's legendary, we all know.
Yep.
She's been in countless films from schlock to incredible and in between. But the one thing she hasn't appeared a ton on is TV shows. And for such a dramatic actor who's built herself on people going to the movies just because it's a Meryl movie. What do you want to see at the theater this weekend? Oh, I think there's a new Meryl Streep movie. Let's check it out, She's one of the only people left that I think can sell a film entirely on name alone. I really don't think that you can do that with very many actors these days. And it's incredible to see her in a recurring role on a television show. The growing trend we're seeing is that so many of these incredible actors are coming from film droughts to these television shows, and the fact that we get to see a slow burn of their character from episode to episode is something we haven't been able to experience before with these actors. And speaking of not being able to experience things with actors on TV shows, Nicolas Cage.
The man himself.
The legend himself.
Love it.
Nicolas Cage might be the only actor on the entire list who hasn't had any television roles. No guest starring on Friends, no random cameo in Cougar Town. Nick has strictly stuck to film roles, and despite this, he's been in a lot of questionable choices. But that also leads us to ask, why has he stayed so far from television shows? It's obvious that it's not the content that drives a lot of his work, but it just seems so odd that he has 0 roles in television. And that's about to change, and I'm sure everyone is sick of hearing this for the 100th time, but Nicolas Cage will be playing Joe Exotic in the Joe Exotic biopic show.
Gorian, I'm so excited for that. I want you to tell me that again.
Nicolas Cage will be playing Joe Exotic in the Joe Exotic biopic show.
You actually did it. That's so great.
One more time. Nicolas Cage will be playing Joe Exotic in the Joe Exotic biopic show. And this is a double-edged sword. On one hand, this show was the hottest show ever for a brief period of time. Mm-hmm. And the idea of there being a TV show based on this documentary was a no-brainer. But hearing that Nicolas Cage agreed to be the lead is just really fascinating to me. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of people were kind of saying it should be him just because, the looks are a bit similar, but and I guess they're a bit both crazy and zany and whatnot, but, what made him take the role? What finally broke his streak of not acting? Was the sack of money just big enough this time? Did they get a big enough bag of money to drop to Nick Cage to be like, okay, 6 episodes, 8 episodes, you know?
I will say, I think you might have hit the nail on the head. I love Nick Cage, but I don't know if you know this. He will do any movie for $1 million. If you have $1 million, no matter how bad it is, he will be in your movie.
And the Oscar is awarded to Nicolas Cage.
I can't help but feel like, despite how popular the show was and just how good a Joe Exotic Nicolas Cage could be, it feels weird that this is his first like his first TV role is basically playing a meme. And not only that, but his acting is basically an impersonation of Joe Exotic. And we can also probably expect like this passionate, raw performance by Nick Cage. And I'm sure despite him playing an existing person, that there will be a lot of like Nicolas Cage stuff that he brings to it to make it, truly unique and stand out. But I don't know. I really hope that this does well. I mean, again, it's also always weird to have a TV show coming out or just any property so late. I mean, I'm sure they're still making a Minecraft film, despite being 10 years too late. I mean, when is they're going to have to release a second season of Joe Exotic when this comes out, I think, to gain more momentum for it again.
Exactly. Okay, not to keep harping on this Joe Exotic thing, but I just want to be real. I think a lot of it's going to boil down to the direction, and I really, really hope it has a good director. Because is it going to be like funny, angry Nicolas Cage, or just like overly angry Nicolas Cage, or like a good actor Nicolas Cage? I don't know. There's so many options.
And the one thing too is that he's, despite what people are saying, he's an anti-hero. Joe Exotic is a guy that hired a guy to kill a guy, Basically. He's not a good guy.
Yeah.
And the fact that Nicolas Cage is going to have to play a Joe Exotic that kind of like pulls on your heartstrings, like, is that what, are they going to try and do that? Or are they going to like lean into the craziness? Like, are they going to try and make him empathetic? Or are they going to try and make him like a caricature and really just turn up the craziness and just have you kind of laugh at him for the whole time? I mean,
yeah.
We'll see when this comes out. I mean, I'm curious to see who's going to play the other woman.
Carol Baskin?
Yeah, I wonder who's playing Carol Baskin more than anything.
Oh, yeah.
So, finishing up this section, we have Christian Slater. And, as I always say, better slate than never. Christian Slater has a complete 180. He's in a complete shift from film to TV. And in the 80s and 90s, Christian Slater was a beast of an actor. I just saw a video today where he was in this skateboarding movie where Tony Hawk was the stunt double. The dude's done everything. He has 128 acting credits, and you're bound to have heard or have seen him in something. And unlike other actors on here that either had a direct shift to TV, Christian began working a balanced load of TV shows and films around the mid-2000s. And we saw him popping up in way more shows as a voice in things like Robot Chicken, Archer, and Jimmy Neutron. And within the last 4 to 5 years, the majority of his credits go to things like The Lion Guard, Milo Murphy's Law, Dirty John, and most notably, Mr. Robot.
Yep.
And it really felt like Christian was leading up to Mr. Robot as his magnum opus. 4 seasons of some of the most incredibly made TV of all time. I mean, I can't speak enough good things about that show. I watched it about a week and a half, all 4 seasons. That show is fantastic. And it started in 2015.
Yeah.
And I can't help but feel if this was released even a year or two later, Netflix would have snapped it up right away. I think it was on Showtime or USA Today or something like that.
Yeah.
Which was cool because they got to do like a crossover with Alf because they own the rights for everything.
Give me 4.
Man, his performance in Mr. Robot prompted me to go back and find some films of his to watch. But again, he has like hundreds of credits in film and television. And hopefully this isn't the end of the line with Christian appearing on like hit TV shows. I mean, it's crazy that after 120 acting credits, it's like you can still put out your life's best work, as your next project.
Yeah.
There's nothing worse than like, oh yeah, he kind of peaked in 1995 with, Surf Kids or some baloney movie. But I think that, I'm excited to see what Christian Slater does as his next show.
Same.
Back in the day, the lines between television and film were distinct enough that it truly felt like 2 completely different properties. As the years went on, and especially recently, the gear used between films and TV shows is basically identical, and the lines between what separate a film and a television show are just getting more and more confusing. We often hear the phrase, "it would have worked better as a miniseries," way more often these days. And ironically, we're hearing it with films like It, that was supposed to be directed by Cary Fukunaga, who did True Detective Season 1. He worked on the script for 3 years and ended up leaving the project for casting and budgetary reasons. And he said that New Line wanted one kind of a movie and he wanted another. And it seems that so many of these writer and directors who are battling studio heads and Hollywood execs are turning towards streaming platforms that give their talent more freedom to create what they want. And this just brings us to a bit of a talking point while we're closing out here. I mean, why are so many of these famous actors making the change to television shows? Do you just think that they're getting paid more, or do you think that they really think that it's the future and they know more people are watching on their laptop than going to the theater these days?
You know what? You actually brought up a couple of very good points, and I think it's a slew of things. But A, I do think streaming services have money to blow, essentially. B, I think streaming services are the future, and we kind of see this with television, and I hate to say it, it seems like it's slowly dying out, especially now with HBO Max, you got Netflix, Disney Plus, like, everything's just easier online.
It really is a complete shift of, like, in that weird 2007 era where you couldn't buy movies online and you really could only like torrent things, and like people turned to like downloading illegally, not because they wanted to, but because out of necessity. I mean, I know HBO has been a stickler for years for letting you just access their content. Living in Canada, it's hard to like legally pay someone to watch some content, or at least it was a couple of years ago when the rights were so restricted from country to country. Now we're seeing way more services offering, you know, the same thing everywhere. But again, are we just turning into cable again with all of these different streaming services?
Exactly.
I guess that's another debate, but I think TV now is better than film, 100%, or at least on par. I think a good, solid TV show and a good film are hand in hand for me. And the fact that we are getting to a point where Quentin Tarantino is cutting up his films to be bite-sized miniseries for Netflix. I mean, The Hateful Eight, people were saying that the director's cut for that was like 4.5 hours long. They cut it into like 50-minute, 1-hour chunks for Netflix. That's incredible. Yeah. And I don't know if it's happened yet, but aren't they doing the same thing with The Irishman, where they want to have it in like, maybe even like 2 halves, you know?
I can't remember. Yeah, I think there was a lot of talk about that, and I know a lot of people were saying, yes, it would be better it would have been better as a miniseries. Just really quick, I do want to take a moment of silence for LimeWire. Thank you, LimeWire, for all that you've done. Shout out.
Kazaa, FrostWire. Napster's still running, though.
You're kidding me. That's great.
Swear to God.
Yeah.
Do you think that a lot more of these people are turning to streaming TV shows because the idea that someone's going to binge watch all of their stuff in a very short amount of time just means they're going to be exposed to them more? I mean, more often than not, we're binge watching TV shows where I'm watching the same actor for 6 hours. All I can think about for the next week and a half is how good Mark Ruffalo was in that TV show.
Yeah.
Versus so many times you leave a movie theater, you know, you get a coffee, you kind of forget what the people's names in the movie were, you know?
Yeah.
Versus watching a movie, you're going through so many different environments. You're in the waiting room, you're in the lobby, you're sitting down, you're walking out, it's bright daylight. When you watch a TV show, you just turn the channel and you're onto something else. I mean, you're in the warmth of your house, your environment, and again, streaming services get you to offer that. So
yeah,
again, the lines being so blurred, it's becoming less TV versus film and more just, you know, streaming versus the regular Hollywood way of doing things.
Exactly. We are seeing a huge shift, and we've progressed so far over the past few years, but that's the biggest thing. It's like, it's the same as Amazon. Do I want to go to the store to buy kitty litter, or do I want to just order it and have it shipped right to my house? Not that I do that, but you know what I mean.
So ordering kitty litter to your house, you're saying, is Meryl Streep on Big Little Lies.
Yes.
You know, and going to the store to get is Meryl Streep in any other movie.
Gorian, if there was an Oscar for kitty litter being delivered to my house by Amazon, it would have it. You know what I mean? And at least 20 noms.
Let me hit you with this question, and then we'll wrap this up. But do you think that we will see big directors doing TV shows soon? I mean, we've already seen Fincher start doing stuff on Netflix for the TV world. Do you think that they're going to be able to get a big enough bag of money for Christopher Nolan or for Tarantino, or even, I mean, I know Nolan must be having the worst time of his life right now because theaters are still closed. He really wants to release Tenet. He doesn't want to I know he's very against the whole streaming culture and seeing stuff online, but after seeing how long theaters have been closed for, surely he must be thinking, damn it, I should have made this as a TV show, you know?
Yeah. You know what? To answer your question, yes, and yes. I honestly, like, I know so many directors like Cary Fukunaga have already made their way to streaming services and have are already succeeding. Like, they're doing great with their content. And again, it's amazing because it gives them so much freedom to be creative, you know, and just do their thing. But people like Nolan, I love Christopher Nolan, and I love what he's doing for cinema, and he wants to maintain that. You know, he doesn't want the movie theater experience to die. But I will say this: you can't stop the future, but there will always be a hunger for the cinematic experience. You know, sitting in a room full of like 100 other people reacting at the same time as you watching the same movie. You cannot beat that even at the comfort of your own home. You know what I mean?
All right, let's end on this then. My friend in New York City said a couple months ago, Netflix bought, I forget what the name of the theater is, but it's an 800-seat single-screen theater.
Yeah.
And I was talking to him, and I was thinking, you know what would be fantastic? If you pay a $10 surcharge on your Netflix bill, and you get to go to this Netflix theater that's 24 hours a day, just always playing something. And I think that seeing TV shows on a big screen should be the next thing. I think that Netflix should start buying theaters and offering binge days where you can show up at noon and binge watch a freaking series with a bunch of other people in the theater. Because that's the one thing that these big feature films will always have over TV shows and having shows on TV streaming. You don't get the same reaction in the audience. There's been moments where I've seen TV shows where I look around my room, you know, because I'm just so shocked by what's happening, either for how good something is or how bad something is. And I think that is, again, it's weird. It's like you're watching this thing alone, but you open up Netflix and it's the 10th watched thing in the world, you know?
Yeah.
But versus you go to a theater and maybe only like, 50,000 people see it that weekend, but in your theater it was fully packed. It feels like everyone in the world was watching it.
That's true. I'm not gonna lie. I think I'm pretty sure Netflix only bought that theater so they could be in contention for the Oscars.
Yeah, that too, which is perfectly fair.
Which makes sense. But I would love to have an experience where I can go to the theater and watch cool films on Netflix, especially if no other theater chain is going to pick them up. And I will also continue with a prediction. Mm-hmm. We all know that given the situation, AMC isn't doing great right now, and there was talk of Amazon buying AMC, which I think would have been a brilliant move on Amazon's part. I don't think that's happening anymore, but I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we are going to start to see either streaming services buy out movie theater chains, because they are the ones creating so much content right now. They need a place to put it, and people will always want to go to the theater, right? So I either see a streaming service creating a whole new chain of movie theaters specifically for their films, or buying out chains that are going to, unfortunately, I think, inevitably go under.
All right, let's make a deal. In 10 years, you and I are going to go to the Netflix theater, and we're going to choose between Mindhunter Season 7 and The Wrong Missy 5.
Dude, in 10 years, we're still going to be on Mindhunter Season 3. That's my prediction right there.
All right. At the end of the day, we are incredibly lucky with the content we have coming our way. Television shows have been elevated to standards of films, and even some filmmakers are cutting down their longer films into television-sized chunks for easier watching. We've seen huge celebrities hopping the ship from the silver screen to the front page of the Netflix queue. I have no doubt in the coming years, we'll see some pretty big names developing a television show and looking to add the hottest Hollywood celebrities to it. And speaking of the hottest Hollywood celebrities, thank you so much for being on the show again, Nick. Where can they find you?
Oh, Gorian, I'm flattered. Thank you for having me. You can find me everywhere on the internet at Nick the Sound Grip, or you can find my show, Did Somebody Say Movies, at DSSM_podcast. Thanks, Gorian.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And if you need me, I'll be working on my Netflix show, bringing Brad Pitt to the small screen with the doppelganger show, Counter Pitt. Thank you so much for listening to the podcast. Subscribe and leave a like, and let us know what film star you think should be in a TV show. I still think Vince Vaughn deserves another chance.